The movie begins with a man having lunch with Teresa and Esther, who are mother and daughter. During their conversation, they discuss the man's profession, and he reveals that he is a tour guide. Esther, curious about his job, starts to ask more questions, but her mother interrupts her, asking her to let the man enjoy his meal. After the meal, Esther approaches her mother and says,
"It's taking forever."
Her mother advises her to be patient. However, when they turn around, they find that the man is sitting unconscious because they have drugged him. Esther searches the man's car and discovers cash inside, which she hands over to her mother. A man named Dirk, who lives with them, burns the man's clothes but keeps the gold for himself. The three of them then take the unconscious man to a nearby lake and throw him inside the lake with weights tied to his body. Teresa marks the wall to keep track of the number of people they have killed. Dirk then takes the man's car and abandons it in a remote location. The next day, Esther hears her mother speaking with some strangers asking for her help as they have no food or money, but Teresa refuses to help them. Esther's heart melts looking at their condition and goes after them to give them some food. When she comes back, she tells her mother that they should have helped them, to which her mother says, "They are good people and not coyotes," the term she uses for criminals who need to be punished. The next day, Esther goes to get more sleeping pills from the pharmacy and says her mother misplaced the one she bought a few days back. The lady at the pharmacy tells her to be careful with them and brings her a bottle. Later that night, Esther hears her mother and Dirk getting involved intimately. The next day, another man arrives at their house to stay. They use the same approach and drugs the guy. While Esther is checking the guy's car, another car arrives and a guy, Paco, asks Esther for help as his friend, Ignacio, is shot. She tells her to take him to the hospital, at which Paco points his gun at Esther. Teresa also comes out and tells him that they have a guest and there is no space, but he doesn't listen to them. They finally take the injured man inside, and Teresa removes the bullet from his leg, but intentionally causes more pain during the process, which is visible from her smile. Just then, Dirk comes in, and he is also taken hostage by Paco. He then takes Teresa and Dirk to check the house to make sure there is no one else. After checking the house, Paco puts Esther, Teresa, and Dirk in different rooms. While waiting in her room, Esther hears some noise. She slowly opens the door and finds Paco sleeping. She checks on the guest, who is vomiting due to the sleeping pills that were added to his drink. Esther tries to help him, but he starts choking her. On listening to the noises, Paco comes to the room and saves Esther by hitting the man on the head. Believing him to be dead, they decide to take him outside to bury him. Before burying him, Paco decides to shoot him, but the hesitation to shoot the man reveals that he has never shot anyone before. The next morning, while Esther and Paco are talking, they hear the sound of a car starting. Paco sees Dirk in the car and asks him to get out. Esther tells him that Dirk is only trying to get rid of the car. Later, Esther asks her mother if they should drug Paco and the other guy like they did with the previous victims. However, Teresa warns her that it is too risky as there are two of them. Paco informs Ignacio about the events of the previous night. Ignacio expresses his pride in Paco for what he has done and asks him to get medicine for him to heal so they can leave this place. Paco takes Esther with himself to get the medicines. Upon reaching the drugstore, Paco tells the lady that he is Esther's boyfriend. Esther manages to get the medicines by fabricating a story that Dirk injured himself while cutting wood. On their way back, the tension between Paco and Esther seems to ease as they discuss their aspirations for the future. While Teresa is providing medical care to Ignacio, she reveals that her husband was killed by the drug cartel and will do anything to protect her family. She intentionally gives him a deep injection to cause him pain. Later in the evening, Teresa sees Esther and Paco having dinner together, which she didn't like. While Paco is waiting for Esther, he sees that her cheek is red. Esther tells him that her mother slapped her because she believes Esther was flirting with Paco. He tells her that she doesn't have to follow everything her mother says to her, but Esther goes inside. The next day, Dirk brings a walking stick for Ignacio, and Ignacio thanks him for that. After breakfast, Esther goes to her room and Paco follows her. Paco praises her looks with her open hair. An intimate moment begins between the two. As Esther opens her shirt, Paco sees bandages around her chest, which her mother made her wear. Paco cuts the bandages, and the two couldn't keep their hands off each other. Teresa finds them coming out of a room. Paco tells her he needs help, and he couldn't find Dirk, so he had to ask for Esther's help. He then goes inside to meet Ignacio. Ignacio tells him they need to take one of the women during their meeting with the cartel, but Paco mentions it will make them look like fools. Instead, they should take Dirk with them. Ignacio agrees to his suggestion. Teresa allows Paco and Ignacio to take Dirk with them, and tells them he is obedient but needs clear orders. As Teresa takes Ignacio to give him an injection, she asks Esther to come with her. Paco follows them and takes Esther on the side to find out what's happening. Esther tells him that her mother doesn't want her to be near him when she is not there. Paco takes her to her mother's room and tells her that her mother is trying to control her, and she needs to leave this place. Esther believes her mother is only protecting her, and they are saving money to leave this place. Paco doesn't believe the stories Esther's mother has been telling her. He finds a locked closet in the room and tells her that her mother is trying to hide something from her, and she will not leave this place. While Esther is cleaning the kitchen, her mother tells her that they will take down Ignacio and Paco like others. Esther questions her approach because earlier she said it is too risky and they have never taken down two men who are armed. Teresa tells her they just need to be careful as the guys trust them and their guard is down. When the guys return from their deal, Esther takes Paco aside and tells him to leave, as she has a bad feeling about the situation. Paco reassures her that their deal will be completed tomorrow and that they will leave together. Esther understood that they would stay together. However, Paco clarifies that he cannot take her with him because it is too dangerous. He offers to give her a ride instead. Esther insists that he should take her with him, but Paco explains that his life is different and not suitable for her. Ignacio sees Dirk in the woods and decides to follow him. He discovers Dirk with a box containing expensive items, including a watch. Curious, Ignacio asks Dirk how he obtained the watch, but Dirk doesn't respond. Frustrated, Ignacio strikes Dirk with a stick, leaving him unconscious. Meanwhile, Teresa is upset with Esther, as she's aware of the relationship between Esther and Paco. Teresa decides to take on the men by herself, but Esther attempts to stop her. In a moment of anger, Teresa slaps Esther and walks out. Ignacio takes Teresa to his room and shows her the watch he found. Teresa claims she has never seen it before. Ignacio asks her to read the name engraved on the watch, which turns out to be his cousin's name. He presses her for information about how Dirk came to possess it, but Teresa pretends not to know and attempts to leave the room. Ignacio attacks her and in self-defense, Teresa stabs Ignacio in his injured leg. Dirk jumps in to help her. However, Ignacio quickly overpowers Dirk. As Ignacio continues to fight Dirk, Teresa grabs a cross and, in a desperate move, kills Ignacio. Paco hears Esther crying and helps her out of the room. She tells him that they need to escape because her mother intends to kill him. Esther explains the truth about what they do to guests who are considered bad people. As he listens, Paco realizes that she's a twisted individual who chooses to kill despite not having to. Paco then goes upstairs to see Ignacio. As he opens the door, Teresa shoots Paco and kills him. Esther is heartbroken over losing Paco, but Teresa reassures her that he was a bad person. Together, they dispose of the bodies in the lake. Later, Esther suggests to Teresa that they should leave this place and move to the city, where she hopes to find a job to support them both. Teresa disagrees with Esther and explains that they are saving innocent people by eliminating bad individuals. She insisted that it wasn't the right time to leave, but they would eventually do so. Esther stops arguing with her mother and sits down to eat her food. Soon after, Teresa began to feel lightheaded and then passed out, as Esther had secretly put drugs in the food. The tear in her eyes reflects the burden of what she is about to do. Esther then wraps her up and takes her mother to the Lake Coyote, where she dumps her in the lake.